Is private cloud dead? It depends. It depends on who you ask, and it depends really on how you define private cloud. It certainly hasn't been a smashing success. But my question to you is, do you even need private cloud? We're going to unpack all of that today. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Elias Khnaser, and today we're going to answer the question, is private cloud dead? But before we do that, let's make sure we're talking about the same thing. Most of the disagreements on private cloud stem from the fact that we're not talking about the same thing. One individual, one organization, one vendor will define private cloud in one way. Another individual, another organization, another vendor will define private cloud a different way. So in order to have a productive conversation, let's make sure that we're talking about the same thing. So I'm not going to give you the strict definition of a private cloud. You can get that from NIST, you can get that from Gartner, you can get that all over the place these days. Now you can also get a ton of information on public cloud, hybrid cloud, and private cloud, and all sorts of IT courses in general, IT knowledge in general, by going to pluralsight.com. If you haven't been there in a while, the Pluralsight library is filled with information, filled with courses that you or a member of your team can take advantage of. Now, what I want to do is I want to dissect private cloud. Let's start off with the private part of private cloud. The private part of private cloud usually always deals with tenancy. It's the idea that you are the only tenant on the infrastructure, on the hardware. So that is the primary requirement of a private cloud, is that you are the only tenant occupying this hardware. Now, the second part of private cloud, that deals with all of the characteristics of cloud. That's on-demand self-service. So you have a portal where you can go and request access to services, and you can get the service immediately provisioned, or access to a solution and you get it immediately. The second part is broad network access. You want to be able to access it over the internet, over a dedicated link. You want to be able to access it over from your computer, from your laptop, from your mobile device. You want to be able to have unlimited, infinite scalability. Now, we all know that there's limits to everything, even with public cloud providers. And if what we went through with COVID was an indicator, it's not infinitely scalable, but there's a lot of scale that the public clouds can bring to the table, or clouds in general that should be able to bring to the table. And then we have elasticity. Now, elasticity can either be built in. So when the provider is offering a service, that service is elastic by nature. So the more that you use it, it will grow as you use it, as you consume it. Or you are building services that are elastic in nature by leveraging services like auto scaling and others. So scalability and elasticity becomes important. Pay-as-you-go is a big feature of cloud, right? So you want to be able to pay by the second, by the minute, by the hour, by the week, by the month, whatever. But it's the opposite of a big expenditure. You are paying for the resources that you are using. Now, another misconception of private cloud is that it's always on premises. So location becomes important. Private cloud is not always on premises. It is more popular on premises, but you can certainly have a private cloud in the public cloud as well. Providers like AWS, Azure, Google, others will offer services like a virtual private cloud, VPC, or a VNet from Azure. Now, by default, these services are shared services, so you're not the only tenant on these services. But providers will offer single tenant solutions. So you can build a virtual private cloud on AWS that's made up of all single tenant services or hardware. It'll be very expensive, but it's doable. And you can do the same thing with Azure, and wherever a single tenancy is offered, you can do it. So the takeaway from here is that don't always think of private cloud as something being on premises in your data center. A private cloud can also exist in the public cloud or through some kind of a third-party offering or managed service. So is private cloud dead, Eli? Well, it's not necessarily dead, but it's not necessarily alive either. Now, private cloud has gone through several generations. Let's go through these so you understand what I mean by it's not dead, but it's also not necessarily alive. Now, generation 1, I label that crash and burn. That was the era of converged infrastructure, hyper-converged infrastructure, converge and hyper-converge plus software-defined. That was the era of VCE vBlock and NetApp FlexPods and Nutanix and VMware and the integrations with ServiceNow for a self-service portal and all the orchestration on the back end. It was the era of complexity. It was the era of, consultants, being on premises and doing things for a very long period of time. So difficult integrations. But more than difficult implementations, it was almost impossible operations after this thing if this thing was ever successfully implemented. See, the challenge with private cloud to this day is the fact that we cannot, organizations, enterprises, I say we because I used to be in the enterprise, I used to be in your shoes. The challenge with private cloud has always been an operational challenge. We can't operate on premises, or we can't operate a private cloud like AWS operates its cloud, or like Microsoft operates its cloud, or like Google operates its cloud. It's an operational challenge. We build things on premises with so much resiliency that we expect them to never fail. In the public cloud, they'll build things, and if they fail, they'll go fix them very quickly. So the mindset, the operational aspect of private cloud has been the challenge with private cloud. Now, Gen 1 or Generation 1 of private clouds also saw the private IaaS, right? It saw OpenStack and CloudStack. It saw these types of technologies that, again, they never really took hold, right? I mean, you can look at OpenStack and how many production implementations there are, and there might be a few here and there, but I haven't heard of a single successful implementation. Large US retailers have tried to use OpenStack to implement something like an AWS. Many years later, they went to Microsoft Azure or a combination thereof. So the idea that private IaaS was successful is very iffy, and it really depends on who you're talking to. But if we took marketing out of it, if you're asking me, I haven't seen a single implementation of OpenStack or CloudStack or these related type of private IaaS technologies that have really been successful or that dominated on premises. So I would say Generation 1 or Gen 1, great ideas, ahead of its time, but definitely crash and burn. Now, Gen 2, I label that as take another swing. Gen 2 built on Gen 1, learned from some of these mistakes, and actually did a little better than Gen 1. Now, Gen 2 is, it was very popular with private PaaS or platform as a service. This was services or solutions like Red Hat's OpenShift, Pivotal. It also saw the rise of virtual automation capabilities from Nutanix, from VMware, from Microsoft. It also, in this bucket, we would also put a lot of the configuration management, the automation types of services like Puppet, like Chef, like Ansible, like Terraforms, where you can automate a lot of this environment so you're getting the benefits of a private cloud from that perspective. Generation 2 also saw the rise of containers and Kubernetes and all of the orchestrations and the capabilities that you can do with Kubernetes. A lot of the public cloud providers are even re-architecting their services to be based around Kubernetes and containers. So Gen 2 definitely built on Gen 1. There was a lot of benefits from Gen 2, but it also didn't take holding, right? You don't see a lot of these implementations. Gen 3 becomes interesting. I label Gen 3 as just right. Now, we don't know yet if Gen 3 is going to be just right, the way I'm describing it, but I feel like we're finally at the right combination of things. Gen 3 is all going to be about the public cloud providers coming on premises, bringing solutions on premises. Here, I'm talking specifically about things like AWS Outposts, like Azure Stack, like Google Anthos, where I feel like we're able to get everything that we've learned in the public cloud and implement it on premises. Now, these solutions can be tethered or untethered, so they would need to either be continuously connected to the public cloud, or they can operate in an offline or disconnected mode. So depending on the solution you go with, you'll have one or both of these as options. And depending on what you need, this is where the private hybrid cloud comes into play. I say private hybrid because for those solutions that can operate in a disconnected format or a disconnected manner, that can become your private cloud. It is the same things that you're used to using in the public cloud, the same management console, the same features, the same capabilities, the same services and solutions. It's just on premises potentially, or in a location where you're the only one that has access to it. Or if you have it in a way where it's tethered, so it's connected to the public cloud, now you have a hybrid cloud where you have like for like technologies. Whatever you've got in the public cloud, you've got something similar on premises. Now, you're never going to have the full gambit, the full catalog of everything that the public cloud provider offers on premises, but you'll have a subset, a selection of these services available to you. So you have a hybrid cloud or you have a private hybrid, depending on whether it's tethered or untethered. Now, you can also have this in either a self-managed or a managed service approach, where you're either managing that infrastructure or you have the public cloud or a third party manage it in the location of your choosing. And this could also be when you're trying to acquire it, you can either acquire it from a CapEx perspective. So I still talk to customers where, although OpEx is very popular, their organization needs CapEx. That's how they spend, that's how they're comfortable with. So you can acquire these solutions either by paying for them upfront, or you can also use an OpEx model where, depending on the services that you enable, depending on how much you consume on this particular appliance or device, you can then pay for what you are consuming. So I feel like Generation 3 is just right. Now ask yourself, why do you need a private cloud? As part of this conversation, you should always be asking yourself, why do I need a private cloud? Now, if you're obsessed with private cloud from the technology perspective, then you're not focusing enough on the business side of things. So be careful to not do this and turn it into an IT project. There are no IT projects, there are only business projects. So don't focus on private cloud just from a technical perspective. Have a reason why you're doing private cloud. Ask yourself, can I take my virtualization environment and automate it? I can create highly automated virtualization environment. Would that meet my requirements? Do I really need a private cloud? Now, the other thing I will say about terminology in private clouds, as long as everyone in your organization agrees as to what private cloud means, you might have a highly virtualized environment and you want to call that your private cloud. Great. I would say document it, put a definition for it so that if you're hiring someone new, they come into the environment, they can read this, they can understand, and they're on the same page as far as what your organization defines as a private cloud. Forget what NIST says, forget what Gartner says, forget what I say. As long as everyone in your organization is on the same page, then you can call it whatever you want. But what I'm saying here, by the strict definition, by the conversation that we've been having, ask yourself, why do you need a private cloud? And can you get away with having a highly virtualized environment and leveraging the public cloud for those things that you need, the scalability, the elasticity, the broad network access, the self-service? Can I have a good combination of my highly virtualized environment and the public cloud? Now, some customers want to implement private clouds because they're trying to use it as a way to get away from lock-in, provider lock-in or vendor lock-in. And here, I've got a little bit of bad news. No matter what you're doing, you're going to be locked in. You're already locked in today in your data center. Pick your technology. You're locked in with VMware. You're locked in with Microsoft. You're locked in with Oracle. You're locked in. If you go to a private cloud, you'll be locked in with OpenShift or Pivotal. You'll be locked in with Kubernetes. You'll be locked in. Now, some technologies will afford you the ability to move to be portable a lot easier, a lot better, but you're still locked in. Some level of lock-in is always going to be there. And lock-in is not necessarily bad. You should stop thinking of lock-in as a bad thing. Lock-in is what gives you rich feature sets, rich capabilities. And you can always get out of a lock-in. It's just a matter of time. How much time do you have to get out of a lock-in? Getting out of a lock-in is just operationally challenging, it is time-consuming, and it is costly. But we can always get out of a lock-in. So don't obsess over lock-in either as a reason to go to private cloud. So in the final analysis, is private cloud dead? It depends. Generation 1 didn't do very well. Generation 2 did better. Generation 3, I'm very optimistic. But so folks, here's the thing. Private cloud is never going to be as popular as the public cloud. Private cloud is never going to be as popular as what virtualization was in the data center. You have to use private cloud for the right use case, for the right business case. And if you do that, then yes, private cloud will work for you. It's not dead. But if you try to do private cloud on premises to avoid going to the public cloud, then I can absolutely tell you that private cloud is dead. But if you use it for the right use case, then by all means, it's the right technology for the right business case. Finally, I hope this content was very useful. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you're notified the next time we upload content. Don't forget to check out pluralsight.com for all the different courses that you or any member of your team can also take advantage of. Thank you for watching to the end. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one.